and welcome to Something to Talk About. Tonight we are going to be talking about healthy eating and vegetables and fruits and lots of things that you find outside around this time of year. But before we get to that, I would invite you to please call in tonight. If you have a question, comment, or whatever the case may be, please call 781-270-9199. Or if you have some feedback after the show or when we're not live, feel free to give me an email. Send me an email at talk@bcattv.org. And before we begin our official topic of tonight's discussion, I would like to thank my crew. Corey McNeil and Mike Duval are staff members here at BCAT, and they are amazing. They kind of keep this place running with a little help from other staff members. And I would also like to thank JT Marchant and Colleen Moore, who are volunteers here, who give up their Wednesday evenings to come and listen to me talk about something. And one last, but definitely not least, thank you. I would like to thank my husband, Paul, for staying home with Gwyneth and Evan for Daddy Date Night. Gwyneth and Evan, I hope you're having fun with Daddy and playing soccer in the living room, and I will see you in the morning. So good night and thank you. And now, for our official opening, we have Dave Demoresk.
Very good.
Okay, and also known as Farmer Dave.
More commonly known.
I think we kind of need to get you a little straw hat there.
It's on the shirt.
It's on the shirt, okay.
But
I like the
do wear a
shirt.
straw hat every once in a while.
Okay, especially when you're outside.
Yeah.
Got to do that.
When I'm cultivating on the tractor, going really slow and baking
UV
in the
protection.
sun. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming, and
welcome.
I'm
Glad
glad
to
you were
be
able
here.
to come. And I'm glad you brought props. That's so cool. Okay, so before we really get into what a CSA is and the benefits of the CSA program, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, what you studied in school, where you went to school, how you kind of came to the Burlington area?
Sure. So I'm from Drake, Massachusetts.
Okay.
I grew up there, and I went to college at St. Anselm College in Manchester, New Hampshire. Got my degree in philosophy and a minor in French.
That's one of those useful degrees, like I'm a psychology major.
Yeah, but before all these other degrees started popping up, if you go back several hundred years, all there was philosophy. So it's kind of, I feel like it's where everything begins. It's like the seed, and everything grows out of that.
I like that.
You're welcome.
You should put that on your website.
I could. That's a good idea.
Anyway, you went to St. Anselm.
I did, yep. I had a great time there. After I graduated from college, during high school and college, I worked on local farms in the Drake area.
Okay.
So I was always familiar with growing things, and I had a rather green thumb, I guess you could say. But my family didn't have a farm. We were not a family farm. Family farm. Is that how
Did
say
you have
that?
a garden?
We had a huge garden.
Okay.
My mom always had a garden ever since I was a little kid, and I always helped out there. And eventually I kind of had my own section of the garden to take care of. And then I was working on local farms, growing a lot of fruits and vegetables. So it was always in my blood, most definitely. So then when I was graduating from college, it was kind of like, well, geez, what do you do now?
The degree in philosophy, so many windows are open.
So then I looked into the Peace Corps, and the Peace Corps took me in.
I read that on your website. Where were you in the Peace Corps?
I was in the Andes of Ecuador, up at about 8,000 feet in elevation, up in the mountains.
Now, did you get to choose to go there, or did they just say, okay, you joined the Peace Corps, you're going to the Andes?
Usually you don't have too much choice. I was told by some people that because I had so much background in agriculture, and agriculture is one of the greatest needs in the Peace Corps, I could be a little picky. So I wanted to learn Spanish, because at the time I spoke French, and I figured it'd be good to get another language out of it too. But they kept wanting to send me to a French-speaking country. They wanted to ask me to go to Niger, to Senegal. Then they offered Guatemala, Bolivia, and Ecuador. And I said, geez, Ecuador sounds pretty nice. So I chose Ecuador. It's a rather small country with three very distinct regions: the Amazon rainforest area, the Andes mountain area, and then the coastal plain, where it's very hot and humid. And then you also have the Galapagos. So I went to all four sections.
Really?
Oh yeah, while I was there. But
Was it the 2-year stint that you were?
2-year stint.
Okay.
Yep.
3
Did
months
you renew? I didn't. I was considering extending for a third year or creating my own foundation to support my work there.
Okay.
But my second year that I was there, the owner of one of the farms that I had worked on as a kid passed away, and his family asked me if I wanted to come back and run the farm. And, you know, when I was choosing colleges, I was looking into agricultural schools, but I figured, there's no
really?
future in agriculture. So
Yeah, I'm thinking, food, job security. Sorry.
yeah, agriculture was definitely on a downtrend in those years. So I figured, what better to do than get a good liberal arts degree in philosophy. And so I did that. But then, you always seem to come back to your roots and your passion, and I definitely had a passion for growing. And so I thought, geez, when else would I have an opportunity like this to...
Oh, yeah. And being close to home, too.
Exactly. My
I'm
own
the type
hometown.
of person that wants to stay kind of close to home.
I was told it's good to bloom where you were planted. So that's what I did. I came
That is
back
very
home.
philosophical.
Thank you. Deep thoughts with Farmer Dave. So anyway, I came back home and started farming, and that was 1997. I've been a self-employed farmer since I got out of the Peace Corps. I've never really had a full-time job, I feel.
Okay.
I never feel like I get up in the morning to go to work. It's just I get up in the morning and I do what I love to do.
Play in the mud.
Yeah.
Okay.
Play in
Yeah,
the
my daughter
mud.
would like that. She's really into worm relocation.
I actually did take a shower before I came here,
Thank
so
you.
I tried to clean up a little
Yeah,
bit.
the nails look good.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
I even cut them this morning, thinking I was going to come here. But I
We digress.
oftentimes wear this shirt so people know that I know who I am. It has my name on it. It does get a little confusing with some of my employees. People say, "Oh, are you Farmer Dave?" No, I'm not Farmer Dave. But having gotten out there and been in a lot of different communities in the area, it is somewhat nice to kind of go incognito every once in a while.
Oh,
And not be Farmer Dave all the time. I put my name on my business, and I'm not sure how wise that was. But it's nice. It's a good feeling knowing that I'm feeding people good food. It's just a
kind of
wonderful.
a catchy name, too.
It is.
It's
Yeah.
coming up with an alternative would have probably been...
And a lot of the parents of my CSA, the parents of the kids that have my CSA, kind of use it on their kids. They say, "Oh, you better eat your vegetables or Farmer Dave won't be happy. Farmer Dave spent a lot of time growing that. You better eat your broccoli."
And he's got a direct line to Santa Claus. And
Yep. And then sometimes I'll go to the CSA pickups, and the kids, sometimes I feel like Ronald McDonald. "Oh, look, kids, Farmer Dave's here."
Farmer Dave.
But
That's why
it's
you need
all
the straw
good.
hat,
It is, yeah. I do have a small straw hat. One of the problems with it is you get a little breeze and it tends to want to blow off. And so I do have a small string, but sometimes I look a little funny
Silly,
with that.
yeah,
But
okay.
it definitely works, the straw
Okay,
hat.
now
Sometimes I'll even wear a long sleeve shirt in the middle of the summer if I know I'm going to be out in the field for a long time. The long sleeve shirts help a lot
SPF
too.
70 sunscreen.
I should wear that stuff, but I don't. I'd be putting it on me every single day, and sometimes I wonder what is in that
But yeah,
as well.
that's true.
So it's choose your poison.
Yeah.
And I feel like people have been
You
farming
just need
outside.
a giant umbrella over your tractor.
I don't know, but I'm like, well, people have been farming
Yeah.
outside without
Well, I
that
think
stuff
I had
for how
heard
many
that
generations?
if you have like the gradual exposure,
Exactly.
but if you go 2 weeks
Right.
in the summer to bake yourself, then
Yeah, that's not good.
probably not
I don't
good.
do that. I'm
No.
out. I'm in the sun every day.
Now,
But I am trying to minimize the amount of sun exposure.
That's why you
Thanks.
hire people
Thank
to-
you for your concern.
I try. Now, kind of a slight regression. You had mentioned that from the Peace Corps, you became self-employed and started your own business. Did you have to go back to school, or did you have some kind of mentor? I mean, I am terrified of trying to start my own business and all the bureaucracy and all the red tape and all the paperwork how did you overcome that obstacle?
I was blessed by being surrounded by wonderful people.
A really good staff.
Yes.
There you go. Okay.
And my father has always been my accountant. And there's a lot of people that want to support farmers and help them do well. So, I'm also, I think having the philosophy background also taught me how to think and how to research and how to figure things out on my own. I feel like that 2 years while I was in the Peace Corps, it was almost like 2 years of an independent study in agriculture
Oh,
because
okay.
the farmers would be coming to me asking me questions. And if I didn't know the answer, this is kind of before the days of computers, I had like a good 3 or 4 foot library of agriculture books in
Oh,
my
wow.
house. So I'd go back and I'd be doing
That were
research
in
at night and
Spanish.
get back. It was English and Spanish.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes a little bit of Quechua, but I never picked up the Quechua, the native language, very well at all.
Okay.
Just a few words here and there. Dog, ashku, ashku, ashku krai.
Okay. See, things that you remember.
Yeah, right.
Okay, now Ecuador is not your only international work, you've also done some work in Georgia.
Yep.
Not the state of Georgia, the
Correct.
country.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I've done a decent amount of international work besides Ecuador. I also worked with on a University of Massachusetts Tropical Seeds research team. We were researching some specific peppers that I'm still growing
It was like
here
genetic
today.
engineering or just?
No, no.
Okay.
What it is there's a certain pepper that Dominicans, Puerto Ricans really like, and all of that, all those peppers have been imported to the U.S. from the Dominican Republic. So I was working with a geneticist and some other people from UMass to try to get some of that seed from there to here. And we were finding that there was an inbred virus in it, which was lowering production there. And so I was working with a geneticist at UMass, Robert Bernatsky, and he was trying to breed out that virus and also breed a larger pepper.
Oh, okay.
And the Dominicans, Puerto Ricans use that pepper to make a very special sofrito sauce.
Oh.
I also did a study tour in Cuba one winter.
How'd you do that? I don't think we were allowed in Cuba.
No, we weren't, but that was on an educational program.
Okay.
And so for educational purposes, the U.S. government would allow it.
Okay.
So that was with an organization called Food First, and it was researching how the Cuban food system was kind of switched to being kind of a large petrochemical type of agriculture, growing a lot of sugar for export. And after the Soviet Union collapsed, they then had to feed themselves without having cash. So they suddenly had to do it inexpensively, more organically, because they couldn't afford anything but the organic methods. And it was very interesting. They were developing very small laboratories around the country, like 50 different laboratories, to breed naturally occurring beneficial insects, to breed them, and then the farmers could go to the labs and get the insects to release in their fields, doing a lot more production closer to the cities so that food wouldn't have to be transported, because this was like in the early 2000s, they didn't have money to buy gasoline even. So a lot of the taxis or buses in the countryside were then switching to like horse-drawn carriages. It was a very interesting study. But yeah, more recently, since 2011, I've been spending a lot of my winters in the Republic of Georgia, also the former Soviet Republic of Georgia. You know, interesting that I was in Cuba not too long before that. They speak Georgian there, but luckily a lot of the agriculture people that I was working with in Georgia, at least the older ones, had spent a decent amount of time in Cuba, you know, being in the Soviet bloc. And so I had a common language of Spanish with them. The younger people below the age of 40 or at least 30 tended to also speak English. But most of the trainings that I did, I always had a translator with me. If I was out visiting farms, I always had a translator with me as well. That work in the Republic of Georgia was with USAID, the United States Agency for International Development, which falls under the State Department. So Russia, I mean, I don't want to get into the geopolitical system too much, but
why not?
Russia is one of the 15 former Soviet republics, and it's had what should we say, a rough relationship with Russia in the past 10 years. And so the U.S. government's been trying to support the government of Georgia. It's very strategically located kind of north of Iran and south of Russia, and at the west end of the Black Sea, east end of the Black Sea rather. So I was there to try to working on the Economic Prosperity Initiative, using agriculture to bolster the economy. Because they were finding that the agricultural production was going down over the years, and with that lowering agricultural production, they were having to import more food. And they were already having a lot of economic problems. And so with all that money going out of the country to bring food in, it didn't make sense when it could be grown inside the country. So I was charged with trying to build the agricultural economy of the country to reduce the amount of imports of food.
Oh, is that all?
Well, yeah. But it's interesting how, you know, I'm doing a lot of that here. So I feel like, you know, my business here, that's exactly what that is. It's I'm competing with imports in many cases, trying to increase local production, create local economies, you know, making more jobs here, keep all that money locally. Because if you think about it, everybody's spending money on food every single day.
That's true.
That's a lot of money that gets spent every single day.
And it's
how
a
much of that do
necessity.
you want to go outside of the area or outside of the country
Okay.
versus stay right here?
Yeah.
So it was interesting. They asked me to do almost what I was doing here over there, almost replicating my food system model. But because I'm rather busy in the summer months, my time there was more in the winter,
Yeah,
focusing on winter vegetable production in greenhouses, mostly tomatoes, cucumbers, eggplant, peppers, and also working with non-heated or less heated greenhouses on greens productions of dill and lettuce and things like that.
Don't mean to interrupt you, but I believe we have a phone call. Caller, can you hear us? Oh, Greg is on the line. Greg, can you hear us?
Yes, Linda, I can hear you. I wanted to tell you, yes, about both sides of my family. First off, I'll start with the maternal side of the family, which was originally from Czechoslovakia, and they were farmers there. And when my great maternal grandfather got into debt because he had a gambling problem, fortunately his wife stayed with him, and they moved to the neighboring Ukraine, where there was very good farmland, and the prerequisite was only Orthodox Christians could own land. So they were Roman Catholics, so they changed their religion to Orthodoxy and established a farm there. Then years later they immigrated to this country, and then they established a farm out to the west of Worcester, Massachusetts, in the tiny town of Oakham. And that was real tough farming out there because it was extremely rocky. And it's a good thing that my maternal great-grandfather knew exactly how to do blasting. So he did a lot of blasting, and he had horses, and he made one of those pungs which he used to roll the boulders on after they were blasted to large pieces and haul them away and build stone walls. And one bird he absolutely despised, and you never want to ask a farmer, is what do they think of crows? Because that's an absolute no-no. Then on the paternal side of the family, my grandfather used to like to experiment with grafting of trees, like plum trees and apple trees, and tried to get a mixture of those two fruits that they took. And he knew exactly how to bind them. Plus, he was a cooper or a barrel maker, and even in the workplace, they gave him a different name, which eventually became the name that I now have, my last name. But anyhow, make a long story short, even when they came to this country, both sides of the family were not exactly dirt poor, but when they came here, they were actually worse off than they were in the so-called old country. And it wasn't until they had a chance to really and truly establish themselves in the new world before they started to have a reasonably good living here.
Oh, okay. Well, seems to be kind of a common thread, though, of the whole people coming to this country and having to start all over again. Okay, great. Well, thank you for sharing your story, Greg. Do you have any other questions or?
Well, as far as farming is concerned, if you ever in Oakham, Massachusetts, and you see the name Bechan, capital B-E-C-H-A-N, that's the maternal side of the family,
Okay.
in which is actually Czechoslovakian.
Okay.
And I believe that they were not Czechs but Slovakians because they spoke a very Slavic language. And when they moved to the Ukraine, there wasn't that much of a language difference. They learned that Russian dialect very quick.
Okay. Well, thank you for calling, Greg.
Okay.
And we'll get more into talking about CSAs and how agriculture has built in our community.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I was in Poland
Oh, you were?
in the early 2000s,
Okay.
similar to like Greg's talking about. And I went to the family farm. We visited some second and third cousins, and even in that area, it was very common, I think, with the Soviets to try to make certain areas a certain way, and so they moved people that were Orthodox further east and left this part of Poland where my family was from, just more Roman Catholic. So, there's a very old church there that had, signs of being an Orthodox church, but now is a Roman Catholic church. So, very, very common throughout the
Discrimination is
world.
alive and well.
It unfortunately,
the world.
yes. But yeah, I mean, people, now I think 2% of the population of the United States are farmers, or maybe even now less. They say that there's a higher percentage of the U.S. population incarcerated than is farming. And if you go back even just as recent as 60 years ago, half of the U.S. population was involved in farming. So the amount of farmers that it takes now to feed the population has gone way down, which is really,
Is it because of imports, or is it become of...
the Green Revolution, modern technologies, modern equipment, not horse-drawn equipment anymore, imports as well, improved, breeds and things like that. Many different reasons. But, how far do we want to go as far as how few farmers we have in this country and how cheap do we want our food to be? I mean, they say that, that Americans spend less on food than any other people in the world on a per capita or as far as their disposable income goes.
Okay.
And, nobody ever wants to spend more than they have to, but capitalism to a certain extent works in that it's always driving to make things cheaper, which is a good thing, driving towards the bottom. But
yes and no.
There's a quality issue that happens,
You
and
gotta
if
draw
the
the line
quality
somewhere.
keeps sliding down over the years, you might not necessarily note it. And that's one thing that my CSA members take note of, is they're like, oh wow, this is the way things taste when they come out of my garden, or when I was a kid, this is the
looks
way the
good.
vegetables taste. I don't really get these flavors anymore.
And I don't know if it's an urban legend or anything, but I've also been told that the commonality or the prevalence of food allergies now is a lot greater than it was, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever, because of some of these technological advances in food production.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard that? Or?
I have heard many things, and I don't know what to believe, but it is kind of bewildering seeing all these food allergies that are now so commonplace that apparently weren't that prevalent beforehand.
Yeah. I mean, it could have been diagnosed as something else before, but it just seems to be so much more popular and
I agree.
so much more not awareness, but also like a paranoia.
Right. But I mean, our food, we are what we eat.
That's true.
Really. And so when we're, garbage in, garbage out is what they say.
That's true.
So I don't know, it's just, we have to be paying a little bit more attention to what we're putting in our bodies.
Okay.
Not just, going to the gym and having clean houses. That's could be another issue is, we're always trying to super sanitize everything. My produce sometimes does have a few insects or, a little bit of dirt in there. And I feel like,
Extra protein.
dirt's not a bad thing.
It's actually a psychological study
People
saying,
shouldn't be surprised.
people who play in dirt are happier.
Yeah, I'm pretty
So-
happy playing in dirt, I
Okay,
can tell you that.
there you go.
But it's quite a normal thing to have dirt on your vegetables.
All right.
And most people aren't used to that anymore, unfortunately. And some people that do my CSA, that might not be too familiar with, how things actually grow, might be a little surprised that, oh, there's dirt on my potatoes. How'd that get there? Well, it grew in the dirt.
Okay, so let's get back to basics. What is a CSA?
CSA, well, first of all, CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. I'm the agriculture, and I'm being supported by a community of members.
Okay.
And it kind of removes the food production to a certain extent from the traditional market system.
Okay.
And like I was explaining, capitalism, I am a capitalist, don't get me wrong, but we have to be careful, like I was saying, because it's always a race to the bottom for the lowest price product. And the CSA kind of removes it from that market-based system where it's a race for the bottom, a race to get things as cheap as possible.
Okay.
And it's saying, listen, I'm going to grow food, you need to eat. I'm going to explain how I grow things, you're going to eat it, and if you don't like it after the season, you don't have to be a member next year.
Okay.
But it's a tighter relationship where you're having a relationship with me in the sense that you know who grows your food. 100% of the vegetables that you get in the CSA are grown by me and my staff.
Okay.
So there's no
Drake
question.
it dirt.
Drake it and Tewksbury.
And Tewksbury, okay.
Drake it and Tewksbury dirt. You know where it's grown. You know who's growing it. We tell you how we grow it. And because it's removing it somewhat from the market system, I can grow the way I want to grow.
Okay.
I don't have to grow knowing that if I don't have tomatoes this certain week, I'm not going to
okay
have
with
an
that.
income.
Oh,
You know, it's like I know we do a survey every year at the end
Okay.
of the season, and we survey the members what they want, what products they like, what they want more of, what they want less of, and every year I tweak my crop plan. So every year I feel like it's getting better and better, and the members are getting more and more of what they want.
now over time, are you seeing a pattern develop, or is it?
They want more of everything. With the exception of certain greens, like the turnip greens. Turnip greens don't seem to be that big of a hit.
Okay.
But we always do this thing called a swap box. So if you're getting something in your box that you don't like, you can always swap it out.
Okay.
But back to the CSA model, it creates a tighter relationship so that I'm able to grow things the way I want to grow them, not the way the market wants me to grow them. I'm not growing things to look beautiful, which is usually what somebody that's growing for the market is, because people usually shop with their eyes.
Yeah.
And if something doesn't look beautiful, you're probably not
It's
going to
got
spend
dirt
money
on it. I can't eat
Right.
that.
So my focus is to grow things that are healthy,
Okay.
full of flavor, and full of nutrients.
Okay. One other question that I didn't have on my cheat sheet before, so feel free to say no, I don't want to answer that. But do you have any? You said you get to grow pretty much whatever you want. Is there government regulation like USDA coming in and dictating any rules, and how does that work out?
Not for the CSA. The CSA, to a certain extent, right now is not regulated by the USDA. Whereas if you were growing for the wholesale market and the traditional market, there's all these USDA grades.
Okay.
And if it doesn't meet the grade, it's out. So the farmer is then encouraged, to a certain extent, to use more agrochemicals to make that
Pretty?
product look pretty to meet the grade. Because if it doesn't meet the grade,
okay.
it can get kicked out of the marketplace.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, how do you want me to grow?
It's like
Do you
this
want-
little catch-22 thing going on.
And for interstate commerce, the USDA had to do that.
Right,
So that
okay.
if lettuce is getting shipped from California to the Massachusetts, and the person in California said it's grade A icebergs or something like that, by the time it gets here, the person that's here says that's not grade A. Well, there has to be a definition of what grade A is.
Okay.
And so again, that's where you get these standards and
okay.
regulations and more regulations, and that's where you start to see the decline of the quality of the food, because it's a race to meet the grade.
Okay.
And people are not looking at what's inside.
Okay.
I'm focused more on the nutrient density. I'm watching more the health of my soils, because I know my products grow in the soil, and whatever is in the soil is what they're going to take up. And so I want a nice, healthy soil.
So it's like job security for you. You want to treat your soil well, or else you're not going to have
Yep.
anything.
And 6 years ago, I bought my own farm. So I'm, hopefully I expect to be farming for the rest of my life. So I want those soils to be able to provide for me, the farmer, as well as my CSA members for the next,
You're vested in
50
this.
years or so, maybe, I don't know. So yeah, I'm definitely vested in it. I want it to work for the long term. I want it to work for my fields, for my crops, for my employees, and for my CSA members for the long term.
So you kind of touched upon, do you want to go into any more detail about how a CSA works?
Sure. So the CSA.
So now that we know what it is.
So now, yeah. So
What do we do with
this,
it?
for example, is a CSA share.
Ah.
And at this time of year, it's
Okay.
still rather early in July, so there's a lot of greens.
When do they start? When is like your first crop available for
Well,
your partners?
let me explain. I've been doing the CSA for 7 years now.
Okay.
And the first year was my first year of the CSA, and I did it for 13 weeks.
Wow, it smells really good all of a sudden.
Yeah, open the box.
Take up the box. Ooh.
Want some basil. So the first year I did it for 13 weeks, and then I expanded to 18 weeks, and then to 20 weeks. Right now we have our main season share, which is for 20 weeks. However, we've also added a late fall share, which is an
Okay.
additional 7 weeks, and it goes to the end of December.
Okay.
And
Wow.
we've also added a spring share, which starts in the beginning of March, and it goes for 12 weeks. And we might be extending that for another week or two this year or next. So we went from an original 13 weeks, of the year offering the CSA to now 39 weeks.
Wow.
Which is 9 months of the year, which a lot of people are like, oh, local farms, that's for the summer, July, August, September,
Yeah.
done, 3 months of the year. And I'm like, no, not with my CSA. And I can't say that all CSAs.
Okay, this smells
do
really
such
good.
a
I
long
got to get
season.
this out, or else I'm going to be like
Here, switch it.
focused on hungry.
If you're getting a little overage of basil, try some sage.
Sage. Okay.
I'm sorry, oregano. I think there's some sage in here too. So so somebody will sign up for the CSA
Okay.
and say, I want to try this. This seems really interesting. I know where the stuff is grown. I know how it is grown, and it seems like a really good deal. I'm going to give it a try because I also want to eat healthier. A lot of
Okay.
people are like, I'm going to force myself to eat healthier.
Everybody's on
And
that health
everybody
kick
that
now.
does the CSA is like, I joined the CSA, I lost 10, 15 pounds. I feel so much better. I have more energy. My husband and I, we actually cook together at night now. And they also
I've
say,
also heard, what am I supposed to do with all this food?
but they're also saying how much money they're saving too, which
Really?
is quite amazing. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. That's the other thing with my CSA is people are saving money versus buying it from elsewhere. So you have all these benefits. You're saving money, you feel healthier, you have more family time, you have more community time, and you're improving your health, and you're supporting your local economy. And so I try to make it,
And you're helping the environment.
why wouldn't you,
Yeah, that's true.
is what I want
It's
it to
a
be.
no-brainer.
The biggest complaint I hear is, it's too much food.
Too much food.
But that's why we started offering a small share. This here is our regular share. The box below it
Because
is our
that's a
small
lot
share.
of green in there.
Yeah, we're also just now starting to pick tomatoes. Today we started picking the first corn.
Wow.
Well, I see we put the heavier items on the
This
bottom.
really does smell good.
We put the heavier items on the bottom. We're picking pickling cucumbers. We're
Okay.
picking
I'm like, this
regular
looks like a
cucumbers now.
pickle.
You can eat it if you want. Romaine lettuce. We grow red leaf lettuce, green leaf lettuce, butter crunch lettuce. We grow a red Boston. Of course, we have traditional zucchini. I think I'm running out of hands. I can't pull out everything. Here's some beets.
Beets.
This is
They
a
have dirt on them. No.
Chioggia beets. Now these beets, for example.
These look like major, huge radishes, but they're beets.
Those are beets. That's a Chioggia beet. We also grow a yellow beet. We grow 3 to 4 different types of beets. which
This is
most
like an
people-
education, not just
This, do
dinner.
you know what this one is?
Swiss chard. No.
Close.
I don't have no
we do
idea.
grow Swiss chard. Swiss chard is one of the healthiest vegetables we grow. This one is kale, which is getting a lot of reputation
That looks
these
a
days.
lot different than the kale that was growing in my parents' yard.
Well, this one here is a winter boar kale. We grow
Okay.
4 different varieties of kale: winter boar kale, a red Russian kale, and a Tuscan kale, a very nice Italian variety. We also grow several different varieties of squash. Here you have a patty pan squash. This, your traditional zucchini.
I know about those. Those are the only things I can grow in my garden.
Gosh, I'm going to destroy everything in here. Summer squash.
Well, we'll just have to eat it all.
You
JT,
might
I
not
hope you're hungry.
recognize this one. That's a Kusa squash.
It
This-
looks like a zucchini with.
Sometimes it's called a gray zucchini.
Okay.
It's very popular with Middle Eastern people,
Okay.
as well as Central American people, and I find it quite interesting. There's all these interesting things about food in the world, and I'd like to do more research on it. But this one, so it's very popular in the Middle East
Looks
and
like
also Central
an
America.
albino zucchini.
Lebanese people will cut the top off,
Okay.
ream it out, and stuff it with lamb and rice mixture, and then kind of stew it. It's
Okay.
excellent. Or you could cook it just like you would any other summer squash zucchini. Central Americans will oftentimes make a soup called sancocho with
Okay.
it. What
Now, all
else?
these recipes and everything, have you sampled all of these recipes?
I consider myself a grazer. All day long, I'm just kind of eating things out of the field raw. I mean,
So
today
you'll be
I
like
had 3
plowing
ears
the
of corn.
field and say, "Oh, I'm hungry," and get off
To a
the
certain
tractor
extent,
and
yeah.
pick something up.
But I need to test the stuff, so I'll go
That's
out
true.
and we're just starting
Quality
to pick
control.
green beans. Yep. Today I ate 2 to 3 ears of corn, raw. Just husk it and start eating it
Any
raw.
good raw?
It's excellent raw, but it has to be super fresh if you're going to eat it raw.
Okay.
And also, you need to know when to pick it, and you have to grow the right varieties. A lot of the varieties that are grown for shipping, that you might find at some of the larger chains, they tend to have a tougher polycarp or tougher skin, so that it doesn't damage, by the machine that's going to pick it, or in shipping. Whereas the varieties of corn that I grow are much more tender. If you picked it with a machine or shipped it, it's going to tend to get banged up very easily.
So all your stuff's like picked by hand?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
We pick everything by hand. We spend a lot of time harvesting every single morning. We usually
must.
start harvesting at 6 in the morning. Sometimes we might shift to 5:30 if it's going to be a very, very hot day. But we try to pick things as early in the day as possible before they start to warm up. You know, by noon, you know, it might be 80 or 90 degrees, you know, in
Or this
that
past
field.
week, 120.
Yeah, but you know, at 6 a.m. it's nice, crisp, 65 degrees.
Okay.
The ears of corn and the leaves
Snap
of
right
the kale just snap right off.
Wow.
And then we rinse it, and that's the other thing about the CSA is everything's so fresh.
Okay.
Everything all these vegetables that I grow, the CSA members are getting, almost everything's picked within 24 hours.
Okay.
And that's the other thing. We pick it when it's supposed to be picked. It's not like I'm going to ship it across the country and I need to pick it 5 or 6 days before it's going to be eaten, and I need to pick
Okay.
it more green when there's less nutrients in it. So I'm picking it when it should be picked. I'm choosing the varieties
Like when
that
you go to
have
the
more
store and buy
flavor.
bananas that are like this color.
That's pretty green.
That's really green.
Yeah, really green.
Well, maybe not that shade of green, but
Right.
green.
But that adds to the flavor, and it
Okay.
adds to the amount of nutrients in it as well. You know, if you think about it, you know, a tomato is a tomato because it wants to be attractive to the animals that hopefully will eat it and then bring those seeds elsewhere. Well,
I learned that on Cat in a Hat.
it's red.
red.
It's supposed to be red. It's
Okay.
ripe when it's red.
Well, that looks a little orangey.
Well,
but I
it
thought it was
probably
the
has the most nutrients when it is red. So if you're picking it green, shipping it across the country, and then gassing it to ripen it with ethylene, you know, you didn't pick it when it had all those qualities that would make it attractive to the animal in the wild. So
Okay.
why would we be eating it at any other time? But that's the way our food system has developed. So again, I mean, some people, you know, to a certain extent this is revolutionary, to a certain extent it's reactionary. I'm doing something that's totally new and different, yet, you know, like Greg, the last caller mentioned,
Yeah.
you know,
It's not
his
really inventing
grandparents
the wheel.
and, you know,
Yeah.
they came from the old country and this is what they were doing. I feel like I am growing people's backyard gardens when they don't have to. And I tell people, you know, if you have your own backyard garden and you're growing all your food, keep doing it. That's the best thing you could be doing. If you can't do that, or if you don't have space or time or something like that, I think the
Or
CSA,
skill.
the CSA would probably be the next best option.
Okay.
If you can't do that, then maybe go to your local
Okay. Now
farmer's
you
market.
mentioned before we went on the air that the Burlington pickup is Mondays, and you say you pick every day. So do you have enough CSA pickup points in the area to pick every day and do something with it?
Yes, we have a CSA location 5 days a week. So we're
Okay.
picking 5 to 6 days a week for the CSA.
Okay. And those locations are on your website?
Yes. You want me to
Okay.
rattle them off?
If you can.
Let's
If
see.
not, we can just go to the website.
Dracut, Lawrence, Tewksbury, Wilmington, Burlington, Somerville, Boston Medical Center, East Boston, Lynn, Beverly, Gloucester, Reading, Malden.
Wow.
I'm forgetting several. Tewksbury, did I mention Tewksbury?
I
of
think
course?
so.
Okay.
You didn't mention Dracut.
I'm sorry, Dracut. Did I forget that one?
I think you forgot that one. Too close to
Jamaica
home.
Plain.
Oh, wow.
South Boston.
So you have a pretty good geographic.
Yeah, and most of the
area.
locations that we offer the CSA in, it's locations where people have asked us to offer the CSA there. I'm not necessarily going out there saying, hey, please, you know, offer my CSA here. In the case of Burlington, for example, it was a couple of our members that had previously been members at our Lawrence location because they were working there, and then they switched jobs and they were no longer in Lawrence, but they still wanted the CSA. So they asked me, hey, would you consider doing CSA pickup right here in Burlington? And
And
I
you're like,
try
"Here
to
it is,
keep my
just there."
CSA affordable, and one of the ways to do that is I try to have a minimum of 50 members at each location.
50,
Which
50.
is 50, which is a bit of a challenge for a new location. But Burlington met that, you know, the first year, and this year
Wow.
I think they're getting close to 100 or so.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Now, you mentioned earlier that at the end of the season, you have everybody fill out a survey. Is that what you use? How do you determine what to grow and how much to grow and all
Sure.
that kind of stuff?
First of all, I try to have as much variety as possible.
Okay.
You can see all the variety in this box.
Yeah.
Usually there's 10 to 15 items per week in the share. So I want as much variety as possible, yet I also want the members to be getting more of what they want and less of what they don't want. I mean, I want it to be a little bit of an adventure,
Okay.
but not
Too
a
much.
burden.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I'm not
that's
real
where
adventurous when it comes to food, so keeping,
But I've also noticed that,
staple.
like kale, the first few seasons of kale, it was not rating very high. But it's definitely creeping up. As the members learn how to use it,
Okay.
they're wanting more and more of it. Because the first year people are like, what the heck do I do with that?
Yeah.
But now that they know, and they know how great it tastes and how healthy it is, they're asking for more of it.
Oh.
So we do that end
And
of the
you've
year
also
survey.
put a few more kale recipes on your website.
Sure. Yeah. Try to educate people. The new members
Okay.
are the ones that we have to do a little bit more education on, because they come into the CSA, they in many cases, and they want to eat healthy,
Okay.
but they just don't know how. And so we're trying to teach them what a lot of the second, third, or
What
fourth
to
year
do with
members
kale.
have learned themselves. We need to kind of give them a little bit of support on how to cook some of these things.
Now, do you grow everything in a field, or do you have greenhouses available, or both? Or
Both.
Okay.
That's one way that I've been able to expand the season. It's also another way that I've been able to offer more diversity, more weeks of the year. Like these beets, for example.
Yeah.
We actually started these in the greenhouse around the 1st of March.
Okay.
And the beets that we seeded in the field the 1st of May still aren't ready. So we were harvesting beets because we have the greenhouses, and we can start the beets in the greenhouse and then transplant them into the field. Because of that, we're able to be harvesting beets another 4 to 6 weeks of the season. So beets, we offer beets in our share because we also, for example, we put them in storage. So we're able to offer beets from almost year-round now, honestly.
Wow.
Because we'll start
So
harvesting them
beets
out of
kind
the
of have a
field.
longer shelf life than some of the other.
Yeah,
'cause you
we'll
were
start
talking about
harvesting
tomatoes
these
and-
that we
okay.
started in the greenhouse around the middle of June. And we won't give them every week, but we'll give them right through the season, and we'll be harvesting them in the field right into the beginning of December. But then we also take some and put them into storage.
Okay.
And we'll put them in storage, and then we'll have them through the winter, and we'll be giving them out usually into May.
Wow.
Same thing with carrots, for example. We're just now
Okay.
starting to harvest carrots, and carrots have been very popular. People love carrots. Kids love carrots. So we tend to put carrots in almost every single week once we start harvesting them out of the field, which is
Okay.
usually by the middle of July. We don't transplant carrots because they have a long taproot. They'd kind of
Yeah.
be pretty.
Although every
U-shaped?
time I've tried growing carrots, they come out mutant.
Oh, really? The carrots really like a nice sandy, soft soil.
Oh, okay.
Because then they can really drill down deep.
Oh, okay.
And so I have a lot of different soil types, and it's the sandier soils is where I'll be planting the carrots. But then the carrots, similar to the beets, we'll put those into storage, and we'll give them out to the CSA members out of storage right through May.
Oh.
So it's
okay.
almost like we have carrots 10 months of the year almost.
Wow. That's a lot of carrots.
That is a lot of carrots, but it's good for your eyes.
Okay.
Winter squash, same thing. We'll put some winter squash into storage. Potatoes, we'll start harvesting some baby potatoes usually in August.
Okay.
Um,
So baby potatoes aren't just potatoes that you pick early, that you dig up early.
Some of them are, yeah. No, I call them baby potatoes, and they'll be about golf ball size.
Okay.
They're very, very, very soft skin and a slightly different flavor than those that have gone to full maturity that we're harvesting in the fall.
Okay.
Garlic, we grow garlic as well. We have garlic scapes. Do you know what garlic scapes are?
I have no idea.
So when we grow garlic, we plant it usually in November.
Okay.
And then they pop out of the ground. So they'll start to send out roots in November into the beginning of December, and then go dormant. And then very similar to a tulip, they'll start to push up through the ground in April. And then in May into June, they'll start to put up the flower stalk. This is on a
Okay.
hardneck garlic. And that flower stalk will start to make a loop, and we cut that off, and people eat that.
Really?
And it has a good garlic flavor, not as strong as garlic, but you might picture it almost like a scallion or a chive,
Oh, okay.
but with the garlic flavor instead. People will saute it, they'll chop it up. Some people will make a garlic scape pesto as well.
Wow, that sounds good.
And then, so we'll have the garlic scapes usually from mid-June to almost, not quite mid-July. They're done now. And then we'll be harvesting garlic usually early August. And we'll be giving that out to the members as well.
Wow, okay.
Onions we grow, scallions, potatoes, corn, all the different winter squash.
All these vegetables that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah, yeah. A great diversity.
Okay, what some of the more unique things that you grow? I mean, some of the stuff is pretty unique to me, but what do
kohlrabi.
you consider?
Do I have any kohlrabi here? There may have been some in the other box.
Kohlrabi sounds like something that should be on Star Trek.
Well, and it looks like it should be on Star Trek as well. Kohlrabi, are you familiar with that one?
No.
Kohlrabi is very popular in Germany.
Okay.
The name sounds
Did you eat
German
this part
as well.
or the leaves or
The
both?
bottom part.
Or- okay.
The bottom. So you can eat it. Do you want to eat some now?
I wouldn't know how other than just to like take a bite.
You can. Some people will make a kohlrabi coleslaw if you
Okay.
want. Some people will like to just eat it like this. Any way you would eat
Yeah,
a
it kind of
carrot.
seems to have like a baby cabbage texture or something.
It's again, if you grew up in Germany, you would be very familiar with this.
Which I did not. Yummy.
How would you describe it?
Crunchy.
So it's in the cabbage family. It's kind of like a turnip, but it doesn't have a turnip flavor at all. Kind of like a radish, but not a
I
radish
was thinking
flavor.
kind of a radish, but it's not spicy like a radish.
So again, sometimes
subtle.
in Germany they'll oftentimes shred that and make kind of
Very
like a
good.
coleslaw. Fennel, are you familiar with fennel at all?
I've heard of it.
Here's a fully grown fennel. We also do a baby fennel as well. It has a very strong,
Kind of looks related to like onions and.
has a
Actually,
very
that kinda
very
looks
strong
like
licorice flavor.
Oh, okay.
Again, we
I'm
also
not a big
will
licorice
sometimes
fan,
harvest
but okay.
it in its baby stage.
And you came with a pocket knife. Impressive.
I wear it all the time,
Still at the airport.
or some government offices, which I've learned.
Yep, definitely licorice flavor. Doesn't smell really licorice.
You could grill it. You could saute it with other vegetables. How about this one here?
You are really convincing me.
This one here is a Hakurei turnip. It's a Japanese variety of a turnip. It's also known as a salad turnip. It has a
Okay.
very mild turnip flavor, and a lot of people will eat this raw. Put it in a salad if you want. Maybe I'm giving you very
I'm still
large
eating this
pieces.
stuff. No.
You don't have to try the tomatoes. You know what a tomato tastes like.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, those would be some of the slightly different items. How about this one here? Do you recognize that?
No.
Arugula.
Oh, okay.
So we have arugula as well. Yeah, I'm
This
sure.
actually doesn't have a lot of taste. It's just kind of crunchy.
Scallions, you know scallions? Mm-hmm. We grow a lot of, we try to have an allium, something in the garlic family
Mm-hmm.
or onion family every single week between the garlic scapes, scallions, onions, garlic later on.
That's
We'll
cool.
put some of the onions into storage.
I could be a grazer like you if I had all of this stuff around me.
I tell you, it's great. I love being a farmer because I love what I do. I eat well. I get to eat all these things. The shares are definitely a little bit more adventurous earlier in the season, like now. Now that we're moving into July, things will start to get a little bit more traditional with corn, tomatoes, eggplant, peppers, carrots, potatoes. On the extremities of the season, you will find more of the oddball things. But again, the people that are trying it are learning that food can be so much more adventurous and so much more flavorful with a lot of these things that we've almost forgotten about. Escarole. I mean,
Yeah.
we're starting to grow a little bit more escarole. Again, we're responding to member requests as well. So sometimes we'll say, is there anything that we're not growing that you'd like us to grow? This year we're also putting in some shallots. So we'll have
Okay.
shallots later on in the season. But yeah, we'll adjust. We have a very large crop plan. It's a big spreadsheet that we
Okay.
created several years ago, and we keep tweaking it. And it tells us what we should be planting every single week of the season.
Ooh, wow.
Starting out in the
Okay.
greenhouse in the beginning of January. The first tomatoes we're usually seeding right around Christmas
Okay.
for our greenhouse tomatoes.
I'm just thinking, I have this very, very tiny garden, and you are transplanting all these little seedlings into a bit. That blows my mind.
Yeah,
I'm
it's a
like,
lot of
wow.
work, but you can see
Yeah,
it
it is
definitely
a lot of work.
pays off, and the members appreciate it. And again, where would you get such
Yeah.
nice product with such diversity so early in the season? Again, if you look at just that traditional 3-month local farming season, that's the easy period.
Now-
but we've expanded it to so much more, to
What
full
do
9
you
months of the year.
do if, like, every once in a while you heard, oh, this is a really rainy spring, and all of the fill in the blank crop is going to be, decimated. How do you accommodate or adjust to weather situations and Mother Nature?
No, that's a great question. I've invested very heavily in my farm to try to reduce my exposure to weather-borne risk.
How do you do that, other than just putting a giant tent over your field?
I've done that.
I was just joking.
In one case, we grow these tomatoes that we're now harvesting, which usually you don't see a local tomato.
You get lots of
until
topsy-turvies.
August. No, but we have 1 acre of our fields is covered by what we call a high tunnel. It's a 3-season greenhouse. It can't take a snow load. It's not meant to be heated, but it keeps the rain off of these tomatoes. And so that's going to reduce the incidence of disease on those tomato plants because we're keeping the rain off them. That's one example.
Okay.
We've put well over a mile of drainage lines in our fields so that when we do get rainy periods like we have this year, the fields are not going to be sitting in water. That water is going to be able to drain off. We've also installed a lot of wells and irrigation ponds and buried irrigation lines around the fields so that when we have these dry periods, we can give the crops what they need.
Okay.
So I'm trying to create the environments that the plants want and work around nature as much as possible. But inevitably we do run into some problems. But because of all that we've done, they're significantly reduced. Another example would be before I just put up that 1 acre high tunnel 2 years ago.
Okay.
Before that, I noticed, well, geez, on the really rainy years, we have a lot of corn, but the tomatoes suffer from all the rain. On the really dry years, the corn suffers because we can't seem to get it enough water, but the tomatoes do great because we all have it all on drip irrigation and there's no disease.
But you can't plan that in advance because you don't know what's going to happen.
No. So the members were seeing, more fluctuation.
Okay.
Now that I've made all these investments, the amount of fluctuation that we saw, in the years past has been reduced quite a bit, and now you just see more waves according to the weather. So, it's the same, that's why, when I was working in the Republic of Georgia, I was working more in greenhouses. And I was educating these farmers over there how they, in those structures, have the ability to manipulate the environment to give those plants exactly what they want. They're not, they don't have to wait and see what the weather does. It doesn't matter if you have a very rainy period and your greenhouse is very humid. You can turn on the exhaust fan and dry it out. Take out that humidity, things like that.
Yeah.
So understanding better.
Gee, I wish I could do that to my house right now. The humidity off there is evil.
Well, you can do things.
You can adapt. You can figure something out.
But yeah, no, we've been trying to, make the CSA less of an adventure every year. And even though we ask the members to sign a disclaimer when they sign up saying that, agriculture is inherently risky, dependent on the weather. We're not going to guarantee what you're going to get. Yet, I want them to have as good an experience and have as much of the great food that they're asking for as possible, so that they'll be a member the next year. And that's how the CSA.
You'll get a full box. That's your guarantee. You will get a full box.
And again, for the people that are complaining that they're getting too much food, we also put out a donation box. So when they grab their box, if they say, there's no way I'm going to be able to eat all this. Well, my response is, listen, you're probably getting a 25% discount by the very nature of the CSA. So feel free to donate 25% or more of that, and we'll make sure that goes to, a person in need. So I want nothing to go to waste.
Speaking of people in need, how do you identify those people in needs, like food banks or whatever?
Sure. Well, first of all, we have our Share a Share program. And we raise money with some nonprofits to subsidize shares for low-income people. And in some cases, they will apply to us to be a member of the CSA, but say, I really can't afford the full amount. And so, assuming that there's enough money in the fund, we'll subsidize their share 25 to 50% to make sure that they can afford it, because I don't want to tell somebody, oh, you can't afford it, sorry, see you later. So that's the first step. The next step is any shares that are not picked up by a CSA member, or that swap box, or that donation box, will go to a hunger relief agency. And we work with several different ones, from the Merrimack Valley Food Bank, the Greater Boston Food Bank, Neighbors in Need in Lawrence, Lazarus House, the Burlington Food Bank, Elizabeth Peabody House in Somerville, the Open Door Food Pantry up in Gloucester, a couple different ones in the Reading and Malden area. The church that we have our CSA at in Reading have their own food pantry, so a lot of that
okay.
food will go there as well. Boston Medical Center, they have their own food pantry, and they love it. They love having our CSA there at the hospital, because then they say it's very difficult for them to get a lot of fresh produce at the food pantries, and that, I've heard that over and
Yeah,
over
I've
again.
heard that a lot,
You know,
too.
canned goods, non-perishables, but they very rarely get a great
Which
tomato.
are high in salt, high in high in
And
fat, high in
I'm
everything,
finding that
high in
it's some
chemicals.
of these food pantries, a lot of the clients tend to be more recent immigrants, and they're the ones that tend to more naturally want to cook with raw vegetables.
Okay.
So there's actually a higher demand, I find, oftentimes.
Okay. Now, I read on your website that there's, I don't want to call it stuff, but other items available that aren't like fruits and vegetables, like honey.
Sure.
Do you have like your own bee
Yep.
hives
On the
and,
farm, we have several different
and
farm
jams
locations.
and jellies and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we have, I think it's about maybe 20 or 25 beehives. I work with Ken from Triumph Apiaries
Okay.
out of Bill Ricca, and he takes care of the hives on my property. Excuse me. So the members will know that, you know, the honey that they're getting beginning this year that they can get through my CSA, not as part of the share, but we call it an add-on. But they know that it's our honey coming from our fields.
Oh, okay.
I also work with Maggie Brox up in Rumney, New Hampshire, who I've known for 25 years or so, and she's been making her own maple syrup from her sugar bush up there. She
Oh,
leases
wow.
part of the national forest, the White Mountains
Okay.
National Forest, and she makes maple syrup. So, you know, there's demand for all these different items, and I'm trying to, you know, fulfill
Network.
that demand. We just started doing a meat share this year. One of the farms that I rent, the owner of the farm also has some beef cows.
Okay.
And so we're now offering beef shares as another add-on.
So yeah, you don't need the grocery store anymore. We have Farmer Dave.
That's right. We're kind of replacing
Wow.
the grocery store. And again, we're kind of, you know, 80 years ago there were no grocery stores, so we're kind of going back to the way things were.
Okay. Well, you know what? We are just about out of time, and I haven't gotten to like a majority of my questions.
Do I talk too much?
No, you can never talk too much. But anyway, I'll just have to have you come again, and this time I won't have to eat so much.
Later in the season, we'll have a different mixture.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for joining me. And if people want to join or find out more about a CSA, they can just check out your website. And
FarmerDaves.net.
Excellent.
Yep.
No apostrophe.
No apostrophe.
Okay,
And it's
FarmerDaves.net.
Tons of information on there, a lot of different recipes as well. Information
But
about.
it doesn't smell as good as this on the website.
Yeah,
So,
it does smell pretty good.
all
doesn't
right.
it?
Well, thank you very much for joining us, and hopefully you learned a lot tonight. I did, definitely, and now I'm really hungry, but I think I can take care of that. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us. Hope you enjoyed your evening, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. Thanks. Good night.